B'ez Hashem Yisborach, we begin Perek Revi, the fourth chapter in the Rambam Shechitah, in the laws of slaughtering in the Sefer Kedusha, which the Rambam continues now discussing what is the way of validating an appropriate Shechitah. As the Rambam begins Halacha Aleph regarding the stipulation of a Jewish slaughterer and what is the kosher way of slaughtering. Says the Rambam, Yisrael she'en yidei chamisha dvarim. If a Jewish man does not know the 5 things, which detracts from slaughtering, and things like that, which refer to like checking the knife, the laws of Shechitah, which we explained in the previous parak, in Parak Aleph, okay, so this person doesn't know these things that are detractors from the appropriate Shechitah, and he slaughters by himself. Because in contrast, if let's say he would be slaughtering and there would be a sage watching over him, then it would be permitted to eat from his slaughtering. But here, he slaughtered on his own. So then forbidden to eat from his shechita. Not him, not others. Even if he subsequently learns about it and he says, "Oh, I did it that way," since he didn't know at that time, not him, not anyone else can eat from it. And this is close. It's not actually a safek nevela. It's close to being a davon nevela. And therefore, so someone eats from it, an olive-sized piece, we give him rabbinic lashes like any time you have a doubtful issa. Halacha base. Now, Ram continues. He says, even though he slaughtered in front of us 4 or 5 times, we saw he did a good shechita. So that would tell us that this slaughtering that he did by himself would be an appropriate and bona fide shechita. No, forbidden to eat from it. Why? Like we said in the previous halacha, since he doesn't know the things that detract from the appropriate shechita, which Ramat said those 5 things are basically the primary understandings as he opened up the previous parak to know what is appropriate shechita. Maybe he's going to cause a detraction from the appropriate slaughtering and he doesn't know it. Could go in, for example, sheyashe, he will delay, a yidris, or he'll push the knife, a yishchit besak, and begumo, he might slaughter with a dented knife, or anything like that, but without intent. And therefore, although he did in front of us 4 or 5 times appropriately, but that time, by himself, since he doesn't know, he might do it the wrong way, and therefore it's karav to be a safek nevela. Now, halacha gimel says Ram Yisrael shidei hilchos shechitah. Now, in contrast, a Jew who knows the laws of shechitah, still, initially, he should not slaughter by himself until he first slaughters in front of a sage many times. Until he's accustomed and he's diligent, and we know he's not going to get lazy or get tired out from his shechita. Now, but if he does initially go ahead and slaughter by himself, it is a valid shechita because he knows the halachas. It's just that we want to see him in practice a few times, but if he doesn't, after the fact, it's going to be valid. Halacha dalet. Now, if someone knows the laws of slaughtering and he slaughtered in front of a sage until he became accustomed to it, he's what's called an expert. If a person is an expert, he's allowed to slaughter initially, even by himself. And regarding women and slaves, if they were experts, they can initially go ahead and slaughter. Now, halacha hey. Cheresh, a deaf mute, shainta, a mentally deranged, a cotton, and a minor, which they're always the category of not having das. And so to be shikrish and isbalbo daitai, or someone that's intoxicated, that his mind is all muddled, shashachtu, if they slaughter, shchitasam psula. So their slaughtering is invalid. These are individuals who have no intelligence, or at least at this moment, and shemikalkul, maybe they're going to ruin their slaughtering. Now, therefore, if they slaughter in front of someone who knows, but they see that they slaughter appropriately, then shchitas is going to be valid shechita. It's not like they're individuals who cannot slaughter, they just don't have the das part. But if you have individuals watching over, making sure it's done correctly, then it's going to be valid. Now, Ram continues, let's say Misha and Yedu. Let's say someone who we don't know his status. He slaughters it by himself. So we ask him, we find out about him, we check him, we inspect him. If he knows the primary halachas, the laws of shechita, if he does, then it's a valid shechita. Similarly, halacha zayin. Let's say we see a Jew from a distance that he slaughters and he leaves. But we don't know who this Jew was. Does he know the law of shechita or not? So I raise him with terrace. So the meat's going to be permitted. The reason for that is because since he's not here, so we can't inspect, because if we could, then we don't rely based on laws of majority and because it's efshel levrudis desveki, you could verify the doubt by asking him. But here, where he's not here, we rely on the majority of those who engage in slaughtering, which the majority are experts. So we rely on that. So let's someone says to his agent, his messenger, go out and slaughter for me. And he finds the animal slaughtered. Now, it doesn't even know was it his agent that did it or someone else that did it. And the reason for that is because we don't say the halacha chazaka shlich that the presumption is that the agent did his agency as a leniency or only say as a stringency. Still, the meat's going to be permitted. Because the majority of those who are engaged in slaughtering are experts, and therefore we could go based on the laws of the majority that it was done by an appropriate individual. Similarly, halacha ches, let's someone loses a kid goat or a chicken. And he finds it slaughtered in the house. It's going to be permitted. Again, because the majority who are going to do such a thing to slaughter are experts. Now, but let's say he finds out in the street, then it's going to be forbidden shemen nisnabel because maybe it became a nevela. In other words, here we're not going to say the majority have that slaughtered are experts because here it's thrown out into the street. Most definitely we say that actually was a nevela when it was slaughtered. And lefika chushlach, that's why it's thrown out into the street. And if you find it in the garbage in the house, also it's forbidden because why is in the garbage? Obviously it's in the vela. Halacha tes. If an expert became mute, but he understands, he hears, and has a clear intelligence, then he can continue initially slaughtering. And so if someone doesn't hear but he could speak, so he's not a deaf mute, so he could slaughter. Halacha yud says the Rambam. Initially, a blind person shouldn't slaughter, unless other people see to make sure he's doing it right. But if he slaughters, because ultimately, if he's an expert, so then it's going to be a valid shechitah. Now, the Rambam continues regarding, up until we're speaking about the slaughtering from a Jew, now the Rambam continues regarding if a Gentile slaughters. It says the Rambam, if a Gentile slaughters, even though he slaughtered in front of a Jew with a good knife, and even if the Gentile was a minor who we're not concerned that he worships idolatry, still the slaughtering is going to be considered as a nevela. Therefore, one would get lashes biblically like a nevela. Because the pasuk says in Shemais that maybe that the Gentile is going to call you and you're going to eat from his slaughtering, which the Torah is telling us to separate from the Gentiles. That is, it's warning us you might eat from what he slaughters. At the Lamed, you learn that obviously what he does slaughter is forbidden. And since it's forbidden, it's like as if it wasn't properly slaughtered, and therefore it's like it just died, like it's a nevela. And the Ein Demeli says Rambam, this is not comparable to a Jew, which doesn't know the laws of slaughtering, where they're like the Rambam only qualified it's like kreva l'safei nevela. And if you don't have someone that's a sage standing over him, and if there's a sage standing over him, actually we said it is valid. In contrast, a Gentile who slaughters, it's automatically nevela, even if a Jew is standing over him and watching and make sure that he did a good shechita, it's still going to be nevela. As Rambam says, and there was a great barrier that they made over here to fence in the Jewish people. Even if it's a Gentile who doesn't worship idolatry like a ger taishav, shchitas and nevela, automatically his shechita is going to be a nevela. Now, Lochid Gimel, ramifications of this, says the Rambam, let's say let's say the Gentile started slaughtering, and he got through some of the signs, which are the two pipes, the food pipe and the windpipe, by the neck, but the Jew finished off the slaughtering. Or the Jew started and the Gentile ended. Psula, either way it's going to be invalid, because the slaughtering includes from the beginning till the end, and since some of it was done by a Gentile, so that wasn't a proper slaughtering. Now, but let's say the Gentile slaughtered part of the animal that if it wasn't the slaughtering, it wouldn't make it an nevela. For example, he only cut half of the kana, half of the windpipe. The the Jew concluded, well, that's going to be kasha because the part that he did, okay, it's not a shechita, but that doesn't make it an nevela anyway, even if it just had that cut, as we learned in the previous parak. So therefore, the fact that he started, it was not part of the shechita, and therefore it's going to be a valid shechita only from the Jew. Now, Halachi Dad, Rabbi continues in a related vein, that of a sinner slaughtering. Says Rabbi Yisrael Mumer, a renegade Jew, La'aver min Averis, who is a renegade because of his committing a sin from whichever the sins they may be, but he's a renegade in regards to that Aver that he commits. Now he was an expert in shechita. He could initially go ahead and slaughter. Now, but the Tzarech Yisrael Kasha lived as a sakin, but you have to have an upstanding Jew first to check his knife. And then he gives it to this renegade to slaughter with. And the reason for this is because we can presume that he's not going to go through the effort to check the knife and make sure that it's good. But we're not concerned that if you give him a good knife, that he's going to ruin bedavka, specifically to go and ruin the knife, because if he could just as easily get kosher food, he's not going to purposefully try to get something that's forbidden, like the word of the Gemara, like shavik heter b'achal isura. So if you give him a good knife, he'll do a regular shechitah. Why? It doesn't make a difference. His meat's not going to taste any worse if it's kosher. But if he was a renegade for idolatry, or he publicly desecrates the Shabbos, or he's a heretic, which is that he denies the Torah or in the prophecy of Moshe Rabbeinu, like we explained in Hilchos of repentance. A good thing is like a Gentile, automatically his slaughtering is nevela. Now, if someone is invalid to testify in court because of, again, of his committing of one of the sins of the Torah, so he could slaughter by himself if he was an expert. The reason for that is, like we said before, he's not going to leave something permitted and need something that's forbidden. Because this is a presumption on any Jewish person, even the wicked ones, that unless he's what's called a mumalahaches, he deliberately wants to go ahead and try to do opposite. But if it's just because he's baltaiva, someone that falls into devious ways and he commits a certain sin, and therefore he's invalid to testify in the court of law, again, he's going to go ahead and do what he could do, and there's no reason to assume or presume or suspect that he's going to do it inappropriately, and therefore it's going to be permitted. Now, Allah Tazayin, Eloha Tzedaikin, the Sadducees, by Tyson and by Thunes, which these are from their leader Tzaddik and Baisis, and the Talmidim and their students, and whoever gets misled after them, which they don't believe in the oral law. They say that the written law that we know, but the oral law was made up and they don't believe in it. Their slaughtering is forbidden. And but if they slaughter in front of us, so we see they are ultimately Jewish, as the Rambam explains. Because the whole reason why their slaughtering is forbidden is because maybe they're going to ruin it. And they don't believe in the laws of Shechitah, which are all oral. It doesn't even say anything in the Torah, basically. They're not trusted to say we didn't ruin it. But again, if you have someone saying, making sure they did the right thing, it's going to be valid. The Rebbe continues regarding the concept of Shechitah in contrast to Nechira, which is just basically just chopping off the head. As Rambam says, when the Jews were in the desert in biblical times, they were not commanded in the commandment of slaughtering unconsecrated animals. Rather, all they would do was just stab the animal and kill it. Or they would slaughter it and eat it like the way Gentiles do. But when they were commanded in the desert, whoever does want to slaughter, then if he's going to slaughter, or true slaughtering, should only be a shlamim, a sacrifice to Hashem. Shemak says the pasuk in Vayikra, Ish mi Beis Yisrael, any single Jewish man from the Jewish people that will slaughter an ox, etc. To the entryway of the tent of assembly, etc. So that they should bring, etc. That they should bring a sacrifice of shlamim to Hashem, etc. Now, whoever wanted to just kill the animal and eat in the desert, would just kill it. The slaughtering was specifically if someone was bringing a carbon. Now, Allah Yitchas, but says Rambam, mitzvah this mitzvah to sanctify it as a shlamim, if it's an animal that he wants to slaughter, ain't in Hegez L'Daris. That doesn't apply to future generations. That was only in the desert at the time when just killing the animal was permitted. And they were commanded over there, but when they're going to enter in the Eretz Yisrael, this is just killing the animals going to be forbidden. And that they won't be able to eat even unconsecrated animals, only if it's done through slaughtering. And that they get slaughtered in any place wherever they are, as long as out of the courtyard of the Beis Hamikdash. It says in the pasuk in Devarim, when Hashem is going to expand your boundaries, etc. But you're going to slaughter from your cattle and from your flock, that Hashem your God is going to give you, etc. And this is the commandment that applies to future generations: lishchet, to first slaughter, and then to eat the food.